Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you to everybody who has joined this second in a series of Dhamma sessions to mark the 30th anniversary of the International Buddhist Foundation. Today, to welcome us and to set us in the right direction, it's my honor to invite Venerable Walpola Kalyana Tissatero, who is the spiritual leader of the IBF. Venerable Sir, the floor is yours.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good afternoon, dear Dhamma brothers and sisters. I am more than grateful to stand here with you today and welcome you all to this Dhamma program on behalf of International Buddhist Foundation and the in charge of Geneva Buddhist Vihara, Bante Velajadara Sumanajodhitero, and the chief incumbent of the Geneva Buddhist Vihara, Venerable Vimal Ratana Mahatero. Today, the Dhamma program will be conducted. The well-known, renowned Mahatero, the most venerable Panadura Chandaratana Thero, the deputy abbot of Nissarana Vanaya, the Forest Meditation Center in Sri Lanka. Thank you, Venerable Sir, for your kind cooperation and assistance, sharing your wisdom with our devotees for the inner peace. And I kindly hand over the microphone to Dr. Gaya Gamheva, moderating the rest of the program. Thank you very much. Buddha Saranai.
Thank you, sir. So again, a warm welcome to everybody. I see we've got quite a lot of people on the call. As you know, the theme of this Dhamma series is focusing on acquiring inner peace. And it's really acquiring peace through seeing things as they are. And we are focusing on using Buddhist concept of wisdom. And as you will remember last time, we focused quite a lot on the first noble truth. So today we look to go deeper into the second noble truth. As before, we will invite our main speaker to deliver his sermon. After that, I will help the moderation of questions. Please feel free to write your questions either in the chat or when the time comes, just to raise your hand and you can raise the question yourself. I wish you a very fruitful, mindful, and useful session. So without further ado, Venerable Panadura Chandaratna Thera, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Venerable Dhamma brothers, dear Venerable sirs, and dear devotees. And we are now going to start the second session of this International Buddhist Foundation of Geneva Dhamma series, Dhamma sermon series. And first of all, we pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Idam dukkha samudayang ariya saccang yayang tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata. Tatta tatta binandini seyati idang kama tanha bhavatanha vibhavatanha ati. Dear Venerable Sirs, dear Dhamma friends. So basically last time we discussed to some extent about the information on the what we call the first noble truth or the dukkha satya, or we can literally translate it as the noble truth of suffering. And there we understood that there are three aspects to first noble truth: the kind of a statement, the theory part, and then there is a activity part or kind of a patipada that we need to go through, practically what we need to do, and then there is a realization or kind of a result that we need to go through. So this categorization is common to all the noble truths, where we come across kind of a theoretical statement, and that's a kind of information that Buddha is giving on each and every noble truth. And then actually we come across how we need to uh, perform, how we need to practically act upon that particular noble truth. And then ultimately after we go through it, after we properly behaved on it, act on it, understood it, then what would be the ultimate result? So, in terms of the first noble truth, actually we understood that there is suffering. So, that is what Buddha how mentioned in the first noble truth, idang dukkhang arya satchang. So, there is the noble truth of suffering. And then if we consider the second part, the krutya jnana, sometimes we call it as the patipada, and that is where Buddha mentioned dukkhang arya satchang parinyayam. So one needs to fully understand this first noble truth. The third categorization or third activity, third part, third step is that I have understood this first noble truth. That is where dukkhang arya satchang parinyata. Now, as we discussed last time, so we need to objectively look at this suffering. So there are various ways that we sometimes mention. So I am suffering, I have a headache, I have fever, I went through severe suffering. So likewise we attribute a kind of a person into the picture, but in the stock phrase that Buddha used, there is no I, there is no person, rather looking at suffering objectively. So looking at suffering objectively is one important aspect of the First Noble Truth. So rather than trying to possess the suffering, rather than taking it personally, so we can say we have to look at suffering as it is. There is suffering. And once we understood that there is suffering, okay, we need to properly understand that, properly investigate that. Then only we can ultimately say, okay, I understood it properly. I realized it properly. Now, last time further we discussed actually the First Noble Truth has to be realized in terms of the 5 clinging aggregates, Pancha Upadana, because in certain suttas Buddha mentioned that Pancha Upadana is a synonym for dukkha, is a synonym for suffering. So in other terms, we have to understand 5 clinging aggregates if we are to properly understand the First Noble Truth. So then we have the problem, how are we going to properly understand each and every aggregate, each and every clinging aggregate? So that is where the mindfulness comes to the picture. So in order to properly understand practically the form aggregate, then we have to practice Kayanupassana, where we are trying to investigate the body. We are trying to look at the body properly from a different perspective, rather than looking at it personally, rather than possessing it, rather than claiming it belong to me. Rather, now we take a different approach. We are trying to look at body objectively. So similarly, if we consider the second aggregate, the feeling, Vedana, there also we need to look at objectively. So there is painful feeling, there is pleasurable feeling, there is equanimous feeling. So likewise, that what we have learned as the theoretical statement, so there is suffering, now we have to apply here as well, where there is painful feeling, there is pleasurable feeling, there is equanimous feeling. So we have to have a kind of a distant watch or distant observation, detached observation. Then only we can say, okay, we understood it properly. Otherwise, we are putting so much of our own value judgments, our own likes and dislikes, our own prejudices into the picture, then it won't be proper understanding. So in order to properly understand, as much as possible, we have to have kind of an impartial observation, impartial investigation. So that is why this objective investigation is quite important. So if we look at the third, say, clinging aggregate, that is what we call the sanya, various signs, various perceptions, and all these things again we have to look at objectively. We have to understand objectively without getting entangled with them. So then we can say, okay, to some extent I understood the third aggregate, that is the perception aggregate. Now, actually, we have to look at them in our mind, because even though we use different Pali terms here, this is not something outside. So what we are talking here is completely within ourselves. All our experience can be properly understood using 5 aggregates. So therefore, what we are talking here is completely, we can say, belong to us, or completely what we are. 5 aggregates is nothing but we are. So understanding 5 aggregates is therefore quite significant, and in other terms, we are understanding about ourselves by properly analyzing, properly understanding, investigating. 5 aggregates means that we are understanding our own self. Now, if we consider, say, the perception aggregate, so whenever certain images appear in the mind, say kind of a image, mental image appear in the mind, rather than attributing a person into it, so we need to properly recognize it. So typically what happens is, when a kind of a mental image appear in the mind, we immediately attribute a person to it. We are sort of attaching a person to it, and then we are looking at outside to recognize that person, to associate that person. So likewise, kind of a misunderstanding is going on. But when we properly understand, then we can say, actually I understood it properly. Otherwise, actually we are very much like misunderstanding it. But if we properly understood, then we can say, okay, I understood how it is behaving. What are the properties of these various perceptions? What are the behaviors of these different perceptions? And on the other hand, if we consider the sankhara aggregate, or the mental formations aggregate, so various different kinds of thoughts appear in the mind. We unknowingly start to feed them. Actually, we start to provide much food to them. Actually, we are feeding them, we are strengthening them. So very much like now they become solid, and they actually occupy the mind. And again, then what happens is, ultimately we start thinking, and sometimes even overthinking, obsessive thinking, and even ultimately we can go on to conceptual proliferation. So now we are suffering in another way. But if we properly look at it, if we can see how we are weaving thoughts, how we are adding our own value judgments, how we do a lot of fabrications, then very much like now we are looking at it properly, understanding it properly. So this understanding is the most important part if we consider the First Noble Truth. And if we properly understand it, then we can say, oh, yes, I understood it. Similarly, there are, we can say, the fifth aggregate, that is the consciousness aggregate. So if we consider the task of the consciousness, say there are different kinds of ways that we can consciously aware. Whenever form comes to in line with our eye, we can be aware of it. Then we can recognize it, we can focus onto it. When a sound's available, probably we can select one particular sound, and then our mind or the consciousness get established on it. Then it's getting attached to it. Then it starts to grow on that. When there are various smells available, we probably like one of them, probably our mind get focused onto it, and again the consciousness will establish on it. So likewise, this establishment of the consciousness, the attachment of the consciousness, or coupling with another object, so this can be recognized through mindfulness practice. When we are practicing, say, Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana, so this kind of a skill is possible with a talented yogi. So you can see, so in order to do this kind of a practice, fair amount of clarity of mind is necessary. Otherwise, we can't properly recognize all these things within our mind. So that is why Buddha sometimes emphasize, in order to continue our practice with respect to the mind and the phenomena, Dhamma, so we need to have fair amount of mindfulness, established mindfulness, as well as clear comprehension. Now, if we come to the second noble truth, so the three statements or the three parts of the second noble truth is where pariyatti or the what we call the statement, the theoretical part of the second noble truth is idang dukkhang ariya satyam. There is noble truth of cause of suffering. There is noble truth of cause of suffering. And then pariyatti, patipatti, the kind of an activity that how we need to operate on it, how we practically have to operate on it. So there Buddha give another statement, dukkhang ariya satyang, sorry, what we call the samudaya satya, this in terms of the dukkha samudaya satya, Buddha mentioned actually the yayan tanha pono, this dukkha samudaya ariya satyam pahatabba. So it has to be abandoned. Now actually in terms of the idang dukkha samudayang ariya satyang, so actually Buddha give a further explanation there. So he further explains what it is, this dukkha samudaya, or what it is, this noble truth of cause of suffering. So there Buddha mentioned what I have taken as the topic of the Dhamma sermon, yayang tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sagata tatra tatra abhinandini sayyati idang kama tanha bhava tanha vibhava tanha. Actually we can go further later on to this phrase. And if we come to the third part, so that is where the Pativeda. So what once we practiced upon the second noble truth, what is the result? That is where Buddha mentioned idang dukkha samudayang ariya satyang pahinang. Now this it has already abandoned, because I have worked on it. As a practice I worked on it, and as a result of that now the say craving has abandoned. Now let us go a little detail onto the statements and how are we going to practically work on it. Now if we consider the first statement, idang dukkha samudayang ariya satyang, now there Buddha mentioned, now there is noble truth of cause of suffering, and yayang tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra abhinandini. Certain statements are there with respect to craving, and first statement is pono bhavika. It is causing re-arising or re-existence. And nandiraga sahagata, so it has kind of a delight, and not only delight, it has kind of a lust coupled with delight. It has a kind of an attachment coupled with delight. And then tatra tatra abhinandini, then and there it finds delight. Now these are interesting findings of the Buddha, that he has closely investigated this noble truth of cause of suffering, that is craving, and he understood, okay, there are certain very subtle characteristics if we consider the craving. And not only that, Buddha mentioned there are three categories of craving, three types of craving, that is kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. Let me first explain these three. Say kama tanha. Now this is something that we all understand. So when we consider our typical livelihood, we like to see beautiful sceneries, and we like to hear music, we like to smell beautiful or say fragrances. Now if we consider our tongue, using the tongue we like to have delicious food, various delicacies, and with the body we like to have pleasant sensations. Now all these, what we call the five chords of sense pleasures, is something that we all like to acquire. We all like to want to satisfy our senses, gratify our senses using this kind of external forms, and then the say sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and the tangibles. Now this is something is not only even common to human beings, even animals, even the celestial beings. So we all have this kama tanha, kind of a desire for sense pleasures. As a result of that, our activities are fairly concerned about how to satisfy these senses, how to satisfy my eye, how to satisfy ear, nose, tongue, body. Now, this is one part. So, we all have this kind of a desire, and we all can understand, okay, I am operating based on that. Basically, the problem is that we don't take it like that. We are very much like governed by these desires. And looking at desire as desire is something that we are trying to understand. Then only we say, okay, I have a desire to see a picture, I have a desire to look at or hear a music, I have a desire to smell some fragrance, I have a desire to experience some sensation. So likewise, now we are a little bit closely analyzing this desire, but otherwise actually what happened is this desire is taking ourselves into kind of a slavery. So we are simply operating based on that desire. So even for us to understand desire, we need to have some amount of mindfulness, some amount of clarity of mind. Otherwise we simply become victimized to these desires. We are driven by desires. So that is why Buddha sometimes mention desire is very much like our companion. That's a very interesting verse available in the Sutta Nipata. Tanha dutiyo puriso diga madhana sansara itta bhava anyata bhavang sansarang nati vattati. So Buddha mentioned, so this craving is very much like your partner, very much like your companion. So within this whole sansaric journey, so that is what we have accompanied. And because of that, again and again we are coming to the sansara. Again and again we are subjected to this rebecoming process. So we can say tanha, craving, is very much our partner, very much our companion, and with that we are operating. And we are constantly trying to satisfy craving. And whenever craving say, okay, I need something to see, so that through the seeing, through watching, I want to be satisfied. Now I am finding various films, various sceneries to satisfy my eye faculty. Whenever craving say that I want to satisfy my ear, I want to listen to music, okay, I am just operating based on that order, and now I am listening to music. Now suppose whenever whenever what you call this craving indicates us, okay, I want to smell various fragrances, so I am just going after it and trying searching various fragrances, and accordingly I am operating. Whenever craving order me, okay, I need something to taste, now I am acting upon it. Now I am trying to find out various delicacies. Whenever craving order us, okay, I want to satisfy my body, and then I am trying to find out various pleasant feelings, pleasant sensations. So likewise, craving is very much like our companion, our partner, and giving us various orders, and I am simply like a slave. I'm simply getting victim of this victimized to these various orders. So that's why sometimes Buddha mention uh, that we are, the whole world has become a kind of a slave to this very tanha. But on the other hand, now we can consider, say, what we call this uh, kama tanha as another aspect. So that is where we not only these five sense pleasures, but there are certain other status, say social status and family status, etc. I mean, those are again there, and we all sometimes aspire to have them. We have various ambitions to have them, and we are operating according to them, and we are driven by various different kinds of craving. Now if we come to the second part, that is the bhava tanha. Now this is very subtle, Actually, in our mind, we are constantly looking after or looking forward to a next moment. We are never being satisfied in the present moment. Rather, constantly we are driven by a next moment. I want to become a doctor. I want to become an engineer. I want to become successful. I want to become the president. I want to become a minister. I want to become, say, rich. I want to become the leader. I want to become a father, whatever it is. So, different kinds of motivations are there. So, now we are driven by these different motivations. Now, if we look at closely, so these different motivations, different ambitions, underneath these different motivations and ambitions, what is available is nothing but bhavatanha. We have a kind of a desire to become. We have a kind of a desire to be someone. And so this is very much like operating constantly within our mind, and it's very subtle, and it's very much like a donkey is given with a carrot, and it is simply chasing it. And we too are like that, and various desires are there. I want to accomplish it, I want to have it, now I am going after them. So these various different kinds of desires are operating within the mind, and I want to become that. I want that. I want to become this and that. So this becoming process, desire to become, is something available in the mind, so that we can say very subtle, and desire to become, what we call as a bhavatanha. And on the opposite is the vibhavatanha, where I want to get rid of. Now assume that I am suffering. I want to get rid of this suffering. Now Sri Lanka is going through some economic crisis. I want to get rid of it. I am waiting long queue. I want to get rid of it. Now I am hating the present situation. Now the previous one is I want to become, which is very desirable. But here I am hating the present moment, present experience. I want to get out of it, get rid of it. This is another desire. Now they three are actually closely related. Now Buddha actually, for our easy understanding, he properly analyzed it and given different varieties. Actually they are very closely related. Now say for example, you want to become rich. Now that's the desire driven. That is the desire operating in the mind. So that desire, I want to become a rich person. So that's a becoming process that I am constantly going after, implementing. And in order to do that, probably I am satisfying my senses. I am going through various pleasurable feelings. I am going after various sights, sounds, smells, tastes, etc. So how we are implementing this desire to become may have close association with the kama tanha as well. And whenever on the way, assume that we come through some difficult situation, now I have to get rid of it. So likewise, these three different kinds of desires are fairly interrelated, and again very subtle. But most prominent one, most easy to understand one, is the kama tanha. But underneath, very subtle desires are available, that is the bhavatanha and the vibhavatanha. Now, interestingly, that another three terms that I have mentioned that Buddha explained, that tanha has three more properties, what we call pono bhavika, nandiraga sahagata, and tatra tatrabhinandini. But these terms indicates, further give us light onto the certain properties of tanha, what we call say pono bhavika. Now typically we think, okay, that is the one causing the rebirth. So that is actually a very, say, large scale thing. But here, if we consider even from one incident to another incident, so we are actually reborn. Say for example, today morning you are operating as one action, you are doing certain activity, and then you are jump into another activity, you are going through another incident, and then you are going through another incident. So likewise, from incident to incident, from one activity to another activity, so are very much like we are reborn to it. And not only that, these different activities we are very much like gluing together, we are adding together, combining together. So that is also there. And that is how we consider, okay, I was available, or I did that on yesterday, I did it in the morning, in the afternoon I did that, in the evening I did that. So likewise, so we can combine all these different activities, or we can combine various incidents that we went through. So these are another attributes of tanha, where different activities that we went through or we experience are properly connected together, kind of a chain. And further, each and every activity, while we are going through that, we are getting kind of a attachment, and we have some sort of a delight. So that is why we are enjoying it. And then and there we are satisfying ourselves. Tatra tatra binandini. Then and there we are satisfying ourselves. Let me explain that using a kind of a simile. Suppose that you are watching a movie. So as you know, movie can't immediately show all the pictures, all the different incidents in one shot. So what they do is one incident after another incident, that incident after another incident. So likewise, it's a series of incidents that they are projected onto the screen. Suppose now one man is there, so he's talking with one person, and so one kind of a conversation is going on, so that incident is over. Then another woman is there, okay, that woman is talking with another subject, that incident is over. And then suppose there are several kids available, now they are talking another thing, and that incident is over. Now when we consider the first incident, so while they are conversing each other, different men are available, now there's a kind of a attachment to that, they are beautiful, and so somehow our mind get attracted to that incident, and we getting delighted with that. And when we are coming to the second incident, there also we have some kind of a delight. Third incident, there also we like to be satisfied, we have a certain attachment. Now how are we combining these three incidents? So that is another part of property of tanha, that is the pono bhavika. So one incident to the other incident, so whenever the first incident is over, now I am reborn to the next incident. When that incident is over, I am reborn into the third incident. So likewise, from incident to incident, from activity to activity, I am getting kind of a rebirth. And each and every activity are combined together internally in our mind. We consider it as a kind of a continuation. We can't look at them discretely. Rather, because of craving, I am gluing one incident to the other incident, and that to another incident. So likewise, I have a series of incidents combined together like a chain. So as a result of that, I have a story in the mind. I am watching a movie. So now I know exactly what is really going on. I am enjoying it. I can remember what has happened previously. And each and every incident is properly connected. So internally, I do all these fabrications, and I have a real desire on that, and again kind of a delight in that. So likewise, you can see now I have explained as a simile, but in our real life also the same thing happens. So we are actually going through series of incidents, series of activities throughout the day, and each and every activity we are enjoying, getting delighted, we are attached to it, or we may be even hating it, we want to get rid of it. These are different forms of tanha, different forms of craving. Whenever we are going through a certain activity, so we are putting all these different forms of craving onto it, and as a result of that, we are enjoying it, getting delighted on it. And now assume that we are going to the next incident, now reborn into that incident. So likewise, now in our whole life, so different series of incidents are there because of craving, Actually, we are reborn to each and every incident, and again we are combining all the incidents. So we feel that I am continuing. So you get a kind of a feeling, I am living, I am continuing. I have lived, say, 50 years, I have lived 60 years. So likewise, I get the feeling of existence. Now, during our death also the same thing continues. So I am not fully satisfied in the present moment. I am sort of frustrated. Maybe I want to have more in the next moment. So I am further desiring. So as a result of that, I am now getting another life, because I am not completely free from desires. I am still with many desires. Accordingly, I am getting another life. Again, I have more desires. I am feeding more desires. So it's very much like a cycle now we are going through. And there also we can say kind of a pono bhavika, mean that from life to life now I am reborn. But if we consider the more subtle level, from incident to incident I am reborn. From activity to activity I am reborn. Each and every activity I am kind of becoming. When I am going to one activity, maybe I am not satisfied with that. Now I am looking forward another activity. I have an ambition, I have an anticipation towards another activity. So likewise, this operation of tanha, craving, is very subtle, available in the mind. Now, another interesting point I like to highlight here, in certain other suttas, Buddha mentioned dukkha samudaya differently. Say, for example, in the Anguttara Nikaya, there is an interesting sutta called Tithayatana Sutta. So there Buddha mentioned Katamancha bhikkave dukkha samudayo ariya satcha. Avijja pacca sankhara. Sankhara pacca vijnana. Vijnana pacca nama rupa. Nama rupa pacca salayatana. Salayatana pacca passu. Passa pacca vedana. Vedana pacca tanha. Tanha pacca upadana. Upadana pacca bhavo. Bhavo pacca jati. Jati pacca jara marana. Soka parideva dukkha domana supayasa sambhavanti. एवं एतास केवलस्य दुःखस्कन्धस्य समुदयो होति इदं उच्यते भिक्खवे दुःख समुदयो आर्य सत्यं. Now we have a different explanation, different definition about the cause of suffering. So Buddha give there very much like the Paticcasamuppada as the cause of suffering. Actually the samudaya side, the arising side of the Paticcasamuppada is explained as the dukkha samudaya, as the cause of suffering. Now, if you can remember the Paticcasamuppada, actually ultimate result is suffering. Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, likewise we heard last time. So what are the different kinds of suffering? And that is available at the last section. Say, bhavapacca jati, jati pacca jara marana soka parideva dukkha domanassa upayasa sambandhi. So this is suffering. So the end result, suffering. So the cause is at the beginning. Beginning part we can say, okay, because of ignorance, different formations are there. So the continuous fabrications are there. As a result of that, the mind, the what you call this consciousness and name and form, they become quite entangled, coupled together. They are operating now closely. Consciousness is well established. And as a result of that, now you are dealing with the six sense bases, and using which now contact happens, and as a result of that various feelings happen. And if these feelings are pleasurable, immediately I am having craving. So now craving may improve, and now I am grasping. So I am now grasping and born into a different state, jati. On the other hand, if I am sort of unhappy about the present state, okay, I want to get rid of it, again kind of a desire, and I am looking forward a different experience. Rather than the present experience, I want different experience. So I am imagining it. So I am looking forward it. I have a craving onto it. Now maybe even though I don't have it right now, practically not available, but I can have kind of an imaginary state. So likewise you can see the operation of craving is very subtle, and in certain suttas Buddha mentioned the cause of suffering as the Paticcasamuppada. And interestingly, actually, we can see whenever we go through pleasurable feelings, we have kind of a desire. So this desire has to be recognized. Now, just understanding different theoretical aspects of the craving is not enough. Now, first of all, we need to have that theoretical understanding, true. But later, within our mind, we have to watch how these desires arise. And whenever there is a desire, we have to admit it. Okay, there is kind of a craving, there is kind of a greed, there is kind of a desire. So I have to humbly accept it, I have to humbly acknowledge it, I have to notice it. Say, for example, you are eating, say, very delicious food. So whenever you tasted it, okay, kind of a pleasurable feeling arise. As a result of that, now I have a kind of a greed. Okay, I want to have more. So that very greed we need to notice within our mind. So you can see, so therefore understanding of this craving is not that something that we can do in the future. Rather, at this very moment, I have to be vigilant. In case some sort of a craving, some sort of a desire rise in the mind, I have to recognize it, I have to notice it. The available mindfulness has to show it. So interestingly, there are certain suttas Buddha encourage this present moment awareness with respect to various desires. Say, for example, in the Patama Sandittika Sutta, available in the Anguttara Nikaya, so Buddha mentioned to one venerable called Sivaka, Santangva ajjattang lobhang attime ajjattang loboti pajanasi. Asantangva ajjattang lobhang nattime ajjattang loboti pajanasi. Evam ko Sivaka sandittiko dhammo hoti. Now Buddha encourage whenever there is desire available in the mind, so you need to notice it. At that very moment, you need to notice it. Okay, there is a desire, there is greed. And if there is no greed, okay, again you can notice, okay, now mind is free from craving, free from any desire. Actually, if you can remember the Dhammanupassana section, now the first part of Dhammanupassana is what we call the Nivarana, hindrances. So there are about the 5 hindrances Buddha give kind of a practice. So whenever sensual desire, kama chanda, is available, so he has to notice it. Okay, there is sensual desire available, present. Santangva ajjattang kamachandang attime ajjattang kamachandoti pajanati. So when there is the presence of sensual desire, so that yogi, that practitioner has to notice it. Mindfully be aware of that presence of the sensual desire. On the other hand, if there is no sensual craving, desire, so again he can notice, okay, the mind is free from any sensual desire. Asantangva ajjattang kamachandang nattime ajjattang kamachandoti pajanati. So likewise, it is very immediate, quite electric. It is not something that you are doing in the future, rather at this very moment, you have to be properly mindful. Mindfully, you have to be aware, okay, whenever the presence of a desire, okay, you need to notice, okay, there is desire. Now that is where if we can connect that Buddha statement, idam dukkhang samudayang arya satchang. Now there is desire. So you see that, so the practitioner has to look at it objectively. There is desire. Now what are we going to do onto that? Dukkha samudayang arya satchang pahatabbang. Now we need to abandon it. So rather than promoting that desire, rather than acting upon that desire, rather than being a slave to that desire, what we need to properly do is to abandon that desire. Let it go. So then we can say, okay, that desire has gone. It has faded away. It has ceased. Now the mind is free from that particular desire. Then we can say, safely say, okay, that has abandoned. Dukkha samudayan arya satcham pahinam. Now we need to do this practically. That means we have to be vigilant, we have to be on guard. We have to be aware of various desires whenever they are available, whenever they are present. And once we notice them, rather than feeding them or rather than acting upon them, okay, and you can actually decide. I mean, if it is a, say, assume that you are pretty hungry and now there's a desire to eat something. Actually, you can decide, I mean, whether I am going to implement it or whether I am not going to implement it. Now, typically we don't do like that. Typically we immediately implement it. Immediately we become a victim of that desire and we are trying to satisfy that desire. But now you have a kind of a choice and you notice that there is a desire available in the mind and assume that it is not something really necessary. You, rather than implementing it, so you simply allowing it to pass away, you are simply letting it go, abandoning it. Now the mind is free from any desire. So likewise, you can say, whenever we are able to recognize, notice availability of any particular desire, so that is very immediate, kind of an immediate practice. And rather than feeding that desire, promoting that desire, now we need to abandon that desire. And once it is abandoned, okay, mind again become calm, quiet, free from any desire. Now, on the other hand, this has to be practically seen, practically implemented. Now, very easy point is that whenever we encounter some pleasurable feelings, you can guard yourself and see, are there any desire as a result of that pleasurable feeling? Because you can remember Vedana Paccha Tanha, Tanha Paccha Upadana. So because of the pleasurable feelings, there could be kind of a tendency to arise of different greed, desires and cravings. On the other hand, because of the painful feelings, there could be a desire arising, desire to get rid of it. Now, whenever we are encountering different forms of these feelings, therefore we can be vigilant whether there are a presence of any form of desire. So at that moment, if we notice any desire, so then we can decide, okay, I am not going to feed it, I am not going to promote it, I am not going to become a slave to it, rather I am simply letting it go, I am abandoning it. So likewise, you see, so all these things are very practical. So we need to look at our mind properly. In order to do that, we need to have a fair amount of mindfulness. And again, our mind has to have a fair amount of clarity. And we need to we should have the skill to distinctly recognize these desires. So then only we can say, okay, now there is a sensual desire, now there is a desire to become, etc. I am not telling that every time you need to analyze like this, but at the beginning, I mean, this kind of an analysis helps us to properly understand, and later the abandonment may be quite frequent, or abandonment may be quite easy. And another interesting point is, why are we having this kind of a craving? Why are we having this kind of an attachment? Why these different desires are available? So the answer is available actually in the early stages of the Paticcasamuppada. Avidya Pacca Sankhara, Sankhara Pacca Vijnana. So likewise Buddha explained, so there is a fair amount of ignorance available in ourselves. So till we have fair amount of ignorance, constantly we do a lot of fabrications. Whatever we encounter through our senses, we do further fabrications. We are adding more and more onto the picture. Now they become more and more attractive. Or the opposite, if we add more to an undesirable thing, okay, then it becomes quite and we become quite aggressive even. We are hating it. So till we have ignorance, so the attachments, cravings, graspings are possible. Now, on the other hand, we can say, if we are able to have wisdom instead of ignorance, if we have wisdom, then we may very much like minimizing all the fabrications and we then be able to look at it properly, have the proper understanding, seeing things as they truly are. So when we have wisdom, there can't be much of an attachment, there can't be much of craving. So having ignorance is one cause for having more and more desires. Having wisdom is, on the other hand, is a cause to abandon desires. So therefore they are fairly interrelated. So practically, therefore, we need to have thorough understanding about the, say, phenomena, their characteristics, their proper behavior, their universal characteristics like impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, say non-self. If we are able to understand, have such kind of a thorough understanding about these things, then it is not possible to have desires because we understood it properly. The wisdom is now operating instead of the ignorance. So then we can say, okay, the desires are easily abandoned. Various desires are easily let go of. I don't need to push because I quickly understand, okay, there is nothing substantial here. There is no any kind of value here. There is no much importance here. So that understanding is operating within the mind. So the abandonment or the letting go process become quite easy. So therefore, having wisdom is the way, having proper understanding is the way, in one sense, that to remove ignorance, and so that we are breaking that parissamuppada cycle. And actually we can discuss that further on the next session, where we have to discuss on the Nirodha Satya. And I hope this information would be enough to have a good discussion. Now I like to open the session for discussion.
Thank you, Venerable Sir. So the floor is open. Anybody who wishes to ask a question, a clarification, share a thought, please raise your hand. I don't see anybody on the chat yet. So Venerable Sir, while people take time to warm up, maybe I start the first.
Yeah.
Yes, usually. So I try to be a good student in this. So,
Yeah.
you know, when we have been talking about meditation and mindfulness and so on, we focus a lot on Kaya Anupassana, right? But today you're really talking about Vedana Anupassana, Dhamma Anupassana as means to see what is happening in our mind as we interact with name and form. And you made the point about that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think in our practice, we tend to do breathing meditation. But really, to reflect on this, we need to do Vedana Anupassana and Dhamma Anupassana as well. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, actually, I mean, recognizing our desires, recognizing various thoughts available in the mind is part of Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana. So actually, we can't say it is a part of Kayanupassana, because in the Kayanupassana section, we are looking at various bodily activities and various bodily parts and the elements of the body objectively. And that is where, in a way, we are developing the skill to look at something objectively. Now looking at various mental phenomena objectively is not easy, because they are quite tempting, quite attractive, and very subtle, and easily we can get caught to them. So whenever we are trying to look at the mind to catch various desires, sometimes that very desire make ourselves a kind of a slave to it. So we are then become driven by that desire. Actually, we try to say understand the desire, but ultimately we become driven by that desire. So not, I mean, to avoid that risk, first of all, we can use say Kayanupassana or Vedananupassana, so that we are getting proper training to look at something objectively. So with this mindfulness practice, Satipatthana practice, so we are developing that skill. Now say for example, so you mentioned about the breathing meditation. Now say when you are looking at in breath, when you are looking at out breath, you are not trying to manipulate it. So you simply allow the body to do it naturally. As much as possible, you allow the body to do it naturally. So it's very much like kind of a passive observation. Say you do kind of a distant observation. You allow the body to naturally breathe, and you are kind of an outsider. You are watching that very breathing process. So then it is very much like kind of objectively you are looking at it. It is not that I am breathing, I want to breathe quickly, I want to breathe forcefully. So that is wrong. Rather, you allow breathing to happen naturally as much as possible, and you are not interfering with it. And now you have a kind of a distant observation. Now, similar process is available in the Vedananupassana. So there are also different types of feelings are available. Suppose typically assume that there is a pleasurable feeling. So immediate reaction is I want to have it. I want to have more and more pleasures. So that's kind of a desire may arise in ourselves. And if on the other hand, if there are say painful feelings, I want to get rid of it. Now I am in a way kind of trying to jump out of it. But looking at it objectively means, okay, I can keep it as it is. Okay, there is pleasurable feeling. It is nothing but a pleasurable feeling. There is a painful feeling. It is just a painful feeling. So I am keeping it as it is and doing kind of a distant observation. Now this is kind of a decoupling of my experience with the observation. Now that very skill, now we can apply it to the mind. Okay, there is a desire, there is craving, there is desire to have a piece of chocolate. Okay, that desire you can look at objectively rather than immediately open the fridge and look, I mean, eat in the chocolate. Now you can look at how this desire arising in the mind, how this desire is, I mean, trying to tempt you, trying to sort of trick the mind, or trying to promote that kind of a more desires. So likewise, it's a kind of a training that we are going through. So it's very unlikely that one can do it immediately without going through that development of the skill coming through Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, because the mind is quite tricky, and these desires are also quite temptful, and therefore the possibility of we becoming a victim of that desire is very high. That is why we have to properly handle it, and that is where actually Buddha give a kind of a warning. So if we are coming to Chittanupassana, very much like you need to have fair amount of mindfulness and fair amount of clear comprehension. So he categorically mentioned that in the Anapanasati Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya, Naham bhikkhave muttassatissa sampajanassa Anapanasati bhavanam vadami. Now, there are actually in the Chittanupassana section, he highlights that. So, if you don't have enough mindfulness, if you don't have enough clear comprehension, it is not, I mean, you can't do proper Chittanupassana. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So in a way, you're directing us to different kinds of training, but they are stepwise. You actually really
yeah.
important to do the first step first. So that observation and objective, passive and but objective observation that it is not my, but it is there. And then of course, then noticing the pleasantness, the unpleasantness, and the consequences. Thank you. That's very useful to have. So we have 51 people online. I really think somebody has a comment or a question. Udaya, go ahead. Udaya, please unmute and speak. Is it Champa or Udaya? I can see somebody called Udaya with their hand up.
Yeah, this is Champa. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Champa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bhante. When you started the sermon, you said about the cause of sufferings, craving, and you said three characteristics. First one was re-arising, and the second one, lust coupled with delight. And the third one, of course, I missed it. I would like to ask if you can repeat it. And my second question is about the three aspects of the tanha, kama, bhava, and vibhava tanha. And there, the kama tanha is the satisfying six senses. And the bhava tanha, you said it is looking forward to next moment kind of thinking pattern. And the third one, to get rid of thinking pattern of something. But these two, bhava and vibhava, maybe it's because of the subtleness of that, though we think, though we separate it like that, all these three is coming together as satisfying six senses, I guess. If you can, sir, please explain.
Yeah, actually, your understanding is fairly correct. So you understood what I have explained. So Buddha mentioned yayang tanha pono bhavika. So it has the property of kind of a re-becoming. So you are able to, from one incident to another incident, you are able to reborn. So this is tanha which is causing that. And not only that, then Buddha mentioned Nandiraga Sahagata. So while you are experiencing the present incident, present moment, or whatever the activity, so you have some sort of a delight. You have a kind of an attachment to it. And you have kind of a lustful involvement in it. So that is how the desire, the delight is arisen. So therefore we don't want to get out of it. So rather we get hooked up with it. So we are entangled with it because of this delight. And the third part is actually called the Tatra Tatra Abhinandini. So there you are quite satisfied. Now you are happy. So then and there, each and every incident, so you are searching for happiness, seeking for pleasures. So these are different subtle shades of properties of the desire, of the tanha. And when they are together working closely together, then I mean we feel kind of a continuation. So I am living, yesterday I lived, today I am living, tomorrow also I am living. So likewise I feel kind of a continuation. I am a person, I am living, I have different kinds of experiences. So this is how we interpret. But if we go very much through the Yoniso Manasikara, if we go to the deep analysis, so Buddha mentioned, so each and everything happens as a kind of a discrete kind of a process. So each and every discrete activity, so we are again and again reborn. And this rebirth happens because of the craving. And there again we can consider, okay, we because of our say desire to become bhava tanha, okay, I may be manipulating this process even. I mean, say, so you are currently in one kind of an activity. Now your mind says, oh, I'm not happy about this activity, I want that. So now you are directing your mind onto another direction, and you are anticipating another activity, another incident, another experience. Now you are performing that. So likewise, so we are desire driven very much like. So that's why Buddha sometimes mention tanha daso, uno loko atitto tanha daso. So every time we feel like unsatisfied, even though suppose a rich person, maybe he has a good occupation, he has several vehicles, maybe a lot of properties, lot of valuables are available, but still something is missing. Internally we feel like something is missing. So internally not 100% satisfied, 100% fulfilled. Something is missing always. So that is why Buddha mentioned uno loko atitto, and very much like unsatisfied, not fulfilled, tanha daso, and we are very much like slaves to the craving. So craving is very much like giving different kinds of orders to us, and we are simply performing them according to their, I mean, those orders. So I mean, when we are looking at it properly, then we can honestly understand, humbly understand how we are behaving like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else? Please speak up. It's such a opportunity.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, Hiranti.
Thiruvan Saranai Hamdrune, what I can't understand is when do we do the Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana? in reference to Udevaya. This is, Udevaya is a very, very important aspect of the way we manage, how we perceive and how we get rid of all these things, isn't it? Did I make the question clear?
Yeah, actually, basically, that is where we are trying to understand the things properly, to have that proper understanding. Now, so if, I mean, basically, we don't do any kind of investigation. That is why we getting attached to things. We are desiring things. But the Satipatthana practice help us to do this proper investigation. As you mentioned, Samudaya-anupassi, say, and then the Nirodha-anupassi. So likewise, say Samudaya Dhamma-anupassi va kayasmin viharati, Vaya Dhamma-anupassi va kayasmin viharati, Samudaya Dhamma-anupassi va vedanasu viharati, Vaya Dhamma-anupassi va vedanasu viharati. So likewise, so we do this proper investigation. As a result of that, we understand, okay, they are subjected to arise. And not only that, they are subjected to passing away. Now, they are not constant, they are not permanent. Rather, they are constantly arising and passing away. So, this is a kind of a deep understanding. So, we understand their inconstant nature, impermanent nature. And as a result of that, we understand, okay, how can I have lasting happiness from this? How can I have kind of satisfaction from it? So then I have developing some sort of a detachment, kind of a dispassion arise. So instead of craving, instead of passion, now the mind has kind of a dispassion. Now you can see, so more we thoroughly understand these things, okay, the instead of passion, instead of craving, instead of desires, so what is have in the mind is the dispassion. So that is why the proper understanding of things is quite important. And when that understanding is available, so the desires are easy to abandon and they may easily get, let go of. So your understanding is not, your understanding is correct. So more we thoroughly practice, say, Satipatthana, and see things as they truly are, their proper nature, different universal characteristics, so then naturally, so these desires can't invade the mind. So these desires can't operate very much in the mind because we have fair amount of wisdom available in the mind instead of ignorance, isn't it?
Yes. So you are going further, analyzing it, rather than we think stopping at Vedananupassana and Chittanupassana. Is that right?
No, it may naturally happen. Actually,
Okay.
yeah, it is not that we are now, say, for example, if you consider the school grading system, okay, you spend 1 year in, say, one level, next you go to the next level, and next year you are going to the third level. So we can't have that kind of a schedule in the meditation. Say, suppose you are doing 1 year Kayanupassana, another year Vedanaupassana, another year Chittanupassana. You can't do like that. So
Yeah.
rather, when you practice Kayanupassana, at one stage you may naturally shifted towards maybe Vedanaupassana. Sometimes even without Vedanaupassana, you may shifted to Chittanupassana. It may happen naturally. It depends on the yogis. So now probably you are, naturally explaining, okay, while I am walking, I observed various, say, characteristics, etc. But now naturally I looked at my mind. Okay, various desires were there, but I didn't promote them. Now they have gone. So now actually you have practiced the amount of Chittanupassana in that sense, because the Kanupassana has prepared the mind, developed that necessary skills, and now naturally, okay, you have even washed the mind. So therefore, now these practices are, in one sense, they are helping another practice. Now Kanupassana helps Vedananupassana, it helps Chittanupassana. They are interrelated very much like, and you can do kind of all types of practices when you are fairly familiar with all four. And within one session, probably your mind may get on to different practices. at the suppose that first few minutes you are doing Kanvasana, and when the skill is developing, okay, now you start to watch the mind. Probably you have noticed particular desire, and rather than feeding it, okay, now you slowly abandon it. Again, now mind become kind of calm. So we are in Satipatthana, but at different levels.
And also, depending on the different instances, then you begin to adopt it to accordingly, I presume. That's how I feel.
Yeah, that is also possible. Now, say for example, when your mind is fairly equipped with, say, mindfulness and clear comprehension, you can even immediately watch the mind. You don't need to, I mean, go back to Kayanupassana and do sort of preliminaries, because you already have the developed skills. Now, suppose you are driving the car. Now you are at the road, on the road. Now suppose that you feel little anxious or nervous. Now you can simply watch the mind, because different emotions are available. Now you can simply notice them, you can watch the mind, you can do the practice. So therefore, I mean, more and more one has the familiarity, more and more the skills are available, you can quickly, as you have mentioned, according to the circumstance, you can select what is the proper practice that you need to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have 20 minutes more. Please, I invite friends to speak up. So, Venerable Sir, I was, as you were speaking just now, I was thinking this Bhavatanha, Vibhavatanha. In a way, we are also engaging in that when we set an intention to pursue a spiritual path. Because in a way, we want to become more disciplined, more mindful. So in a way, it's the same thing, but the intention and the end goal is different. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, very interesting. Yeah, very interesting question. Actually, so I mean, in order to remove desire, we have to have a desire. Now we have a desire to extinct desire or to completely cease desire. So that is very interestingly discussed in the Dhamma. So in there is one sutta where Venerable Ananda mentioned to one of the bhikkhunis, one of the nuns. So there he mentioned tanhang nissaya tanha pahatabbo. By means of craving, you are abandoning craving. Now, I mean, now at the beginning you have kind of a motivation. Okay, I want to be free from this samsara. I want to become a sotapanna. Now these are the kind of motivations that we are. Why we may be even practicing Dhamma. I mean, we are coming to Dhamma and we may be developing meditation. And so that motivation helps, it's true. But later, as we are developing, so development in the sense, assume that now you are investigating various phenomena, now you are investigating the form aggregate feelings, perceptions, etc., etc. Now a fair amount of understanding is developing because of this investigation. And later on, say you may come to a realization, okay, now you are watching the mind, and you realize, okay, when there is kind of a grasping available, I feel little tensed, I feel little stressed, so I feel little burdened. So because the mind has attached to something, mind has kind of grasped something. So how can I mean free the mind from these graspings? Because I mean we don't want to suffer, no. So mind has gone through some sort of a grasping, and I can feel it, I can notice it because of the developed mindfulness. So let me free the mind from this grasping. Now you are coming to a situation, okay, now you are, rather than grasping, now you are abandoning grasping, you are trying to prevent grasping. And actually before grasping, what we have is the tanha, the desire. Because of when we have kind of a desire, now I am having kind of a becoming, and now I have grasped something, now I have born to it. Now, if I look back, okay, there may be subtle craving available in the mind. That's why grasping has happened. So let me notice this, even the subtle craving available in the mind. How mind has led to this kind of a grasping. Now, yeah, I mean, you can see, I mean, when mind has become fairly refined, so the clarity of mind has fairly improved, not only the gross level of grasping that you can understand, even the subtle level of grasping, even the subtle levels of desires, probably you can notice. So therefore, now it's a kind of a gradual process that very desire that you had, okay, I want to become a sotapanna. Say, I want to practice mindfulness. So I want to attain jhana. Now these are kind of motivations we may have. And probably later you may probably understand, okay, now this very desire itself is a kind of a burden to the mind. It feels like heavy. How about just keeping the mind quiet, free from this desire, but I am doing what I need to do. So then your mind is free from any desire. Okay, I don't want to attain jhana, but I am doing the necessary, say, activities or necessary, say, skills I am developing to attain the jhana. I mean that. So then naturally, probably you may attain jhana. Now, say, it's a very interesting thing. Now, suppose, say, you are developing fair amount of concentration, and if there are very kind of a huge desires available in the mind, I mean, it may not grow to the next level. So that very attachment or that very strong desire itself become kind of a hindrance to the further development. Now you understood that, okay, let me quiet the mind, let me calm down the mind, let me have a kind of a, say, release mind, or let me have a kind of a mind which is quite tranquil. And now you are keeping your mind tranquil and with a certain object, okay, you are again and again concentrating onto that. At a given moment, probably you get absorbed to that, maybe in a jhana. But on the other hand, if you consider the vipassana, okay, you are investigating certain phenomena, and because of that investigation, fair amount of wisdom is developing at a given moment. So when enough wisdom is available, at that very moment, probably mind lets go of the whole thing, and mind feels some sort of freedom. So likewise, as you properly mentioned, so initially certainly that we probably need to have that kind of an ambition, kind of a desire. Okay, I want to be free from samsara, I want to develop these necessary spiritual qualities, etc., etc. But later, slowly it may evolve, that our desires, our ambitions may evolve with the practice.
That's really useful because
Yeah.
because we see all of this, but everything is bad, but actually that could be the initial energy to enter a path. And
Exactly.
in English, we also say it's the difference between connection and attachment. So you're broadly going in that direction, but you're not holding on tight to it. So we often say to people, when you relax, you have the results you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
And,
it.
and the other interesting point is that Buddha give a explanation that tanhakkaya is nothing but nibbana. So if one is completely able to remove or eradicate all the craving, I mean, there is nothing further to do to attain nibbana. He is already in the nibbana. Yeah.
So it's the start, it's the base, it's the path, and it is actually the end as well. So
Ultimately, the result. Yes.
ultimate the result as well. It's such a
Yeah.
yes, so, yeah, really, really useful for me. Thank you so much. Anybody else? I also see there are. You can also just give some feedback to say what was most useful in this sermon for you, and it would be good for our venerable speaker to hear from you as well. What did you find useful? Did you learn anything new today? I certainly, it helped me to shift things in my mind, so I'm grateful. And I see we have Bante Sobita as well. If you would like to say anything, uh, please, we have a few more minutes. Take the floor. People are reflecting, sir, I think.
They don't have any desires to talk.
No desire to, or desire not to talk. So I think this is Champa has asked, with clarity of mind, can it be thoughtless? You mean without thought? Champa, is that what you mean?
It can be also, because now say now mind is something very interesting where, I mean, you can have kind of a awareness, conscious awareness available, but thoughts is not an essential part of that conscious awareness. So thoughts are something that we are maybe fabricating unnecessarily and feel like, okay, I feel burdened, your mind is occupied with so much of thoughts. So at that moment, assume that you establish mindfulness and you are able to look back your mind, and now assume that you are, rather than feeding these thoughts, now you properly understand how they are behaving. Okay, one thought appear and then it disappear, another thought appear, then another disappear. So likewise, when you are objectively looking at these different thoughts, now you are not giving any value to these thoughts, and then slowly they start to fade away. And there could be gaps between thoughts, probably you may even notice that. And that means that these thoughts are now not many thoughts, only seldom that thoughts are happening, and ultimately there may be complete absence of thoughts is also possible.
Interesting. So this the five clinging aggregates. I mean, Rupa, it's there. We have Vedana, but it's how we construct Sanya, Sankara that really gets us into this tangle, right? Because we're putting all the subjectivity in it. Yes. So
Yeah.
yes. So thoughtless in English means that you don't care, but what you mean is no thoughts. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
All right.
But I mean, no thought doesn't mean that you are unconscious. You are fully conscious.
Conscious. But you're not creating
Fully
thoughts.
conscious. Yeah. Yeah.
Bante, to add to that question, can the mind be thoughtless? I mean, vacuum, because can mind live without thoughts?
Certainly it can. So that's why, I mean, thinking is not an essential part of the mind. It's a kind of a skill available in the mind, but you can have a mind free from thinking. Now say, for example, say if you consider the samatha meditation, say if you consider the first jhana, so there is a certain amount of vitakka vichara available. So again and again your mind being applied to a particular object. And when you are reaching the second jhana, so you abandon even this applied thought and the sustained thought. In other terms, what it means is your mind is firm on a particular selected object, on a particular focused object. Now no more thoughts. You can't have thoughts at this level, because all the applied mind and the sustained mind is abandoned, vitakka vichara abandoned. So the mind is fairly fixed onto one object. So this is actually I have explained using the samatha practice. But on the other hand, if you consider the vipassana practice, as I explained just now, say more you observe different thoughts appear in the mind, and suppose that you are able to look at them objectively and you understood, okay, these are not quite useful, I don't need to operate on this, and you are able to distinctly notice one thought after another thought, and one is coming and again it is going, another one is coming, again it is going, another one is coming, again it is going. Now you are dispassionately looking at it. Now if we are not feeding them, so they quickly go away. So we are the ones typically feeding these thoughts. But if you are not feeding them, they quickly fade away, quickly go away. Now you feel quite relaxed, because not too much thinking, thoughts appear seldom, and there may be even gaps between thoughts. One thought came and it gone, and there is no thought for 1 minute. Now another thought came and it has also gone. There is no thoughts for another minute. So that indicates the frequency of thoughts are becoming less and less. And there may be another situation, okay, for a considerable period of time, there are no thoughts at all. So likewise, say when one is developing Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana, you may encounter a situation where conscious awareness is available, but thoughts are not present.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the 90 minutes. I would like to invite Venerable Sumanajoti Thera to give the vote of thanks. I would like to remind everybody the next session is on the 28th of August. I really hope everybody can join. For me, I'm finding these extremely useful, and to do it together, 50 of us together, this is also a blessing that we can come together and we can learn from the venerable teachers, but also hear from each other. So Venerable Chandrakya Thera, thank you so much. Thank you is not a word in Buddhism, but in English it is. I suppose what I'm trying to do is extend gratitude, not to say thank you, for helping us on this path. Venerable Sumanajoti Thera, would you like to say a few words?
Thiruvan Sarnai, most venerable Mahasangha and all devotees who participated to the program. Actually, first of all, I want to pay my gratitude our venerable Bhante, Panaguru Chandrakya Thera, as well as I would like to pay my gratitude to all devotees who participated today, especially our Nayaka Thera, Valpola Kalyan Tissa Nayaka Thera. This is our second Dhamma sermon. So I think we concluded well today's program. As mentioned, Dr. Gaya, we have our third session on 28th of August. In the meantime, I would like to invite our third Dhamma session as well. So I would like to pay my gratitude also Dr. Gaya Gamhevage, who well moderated this session, as well as Dr. Samantha Karunajiva and Samit Buladgama are honored for the technical support. Finally, I am very thankful to Council of Devotees of IBF and all devotees of IBF as well. So we can wind up our session. Thank you very much, Venerable Mahasangha and all devotees who made this opportunity wonderful. Thank you.
Venerable Sumanajoti Thera, the recording will be made on the available on the website, I take it. People are asking. Yes, so the recording of all the sessions will be on the website. And
Can we have the website, please? Can we have the name of the website?
Yeah, so
International Buddhist Foundation, we can search or browse in website IBF Geneva.
Thank you.
Okay, so to the venerable speaker, thank you so much.
I think Samantha Mahatya can send or put on the chat box.
Yes, if there it is, everybody. It's there.
Okay.
So
thank you, Champa.
And so to the venerable speaker, we look forward to seeing you next time and wishing you good health and spiritual growth in the meantime. We will end today's session.
Yeah, Thiruvan Sarnai. Thank you for the opportunity, Thiruvan Sarnai.